Hey everyone, it's Peter. It's Sunday morning. I'm usually not here in my basement on Sunday mornings, but of course this strange world that we find ourselves in has brought so many changes to our lives. So for today and for the next number of Sundays, I'm going to be reading passages from the Bible and reflecting on them with you here in this makeshift studio that my son Andrew and I have put together. I'm going to be talking with you this morning about the peace of God, and particularly anchoring our thoughts in these words that are recorded in Paul's letter to the Philippians, chapter 4. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And the God of peace will be with you. I think those words are very helpful, very clear in the way they enable us to understand and experience the peace of God. There are many different ways of getting at that. One way that I have found to be quite helpful is to look at the peace of God as a process. In other words, to think about it sequentially, how it is that we experience it. As I think about that, I think it consists of two stages. First, there is something outside of us that comes inside of us and impacts us profoundly. And then secondly, there is something that is inside of us that gets outside of us to impact the environments we live in very profoundly. So something outside comes in, something inside goes out. I hope that becomes more clear as we reflect on this together. The peace of God, it comes from beyond us to come inside us. Perhaps the best way to begin is to acknowledge that this is the peace of God. It isn't our peace, it's God's peace. It comes to us from Him. It's incredibly reassuring when you think about it, because it tells us that peace is not something we need to discover or create. It's a gift. We don't make it, we receive it. When I think about that some more, I think about the words that Jesus spoke to his disciples just before he died. He was talking about his impending death, and of course this was very upsetting to his disciples. And it was because they were so upset that Jesus said to them, "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. My peace I give you," is what Jesus said to his disciples. This is what we read in John 14. This is a peace that we gratefully, passively receive. What does that mean? How do we receive it? Well, think back to what I said in the brief introduction to this morning's video that I posted yesterday as I reflected on Psalm 34, a wonderful psalm that talks about how God is close to the brokenhearted, how when the righteous cry out, God hears them. I connected that psalm with another verse in the New Testament, Romans chapter 3, verse 10, which is God's assessment of fallen humanity. Picture God scanning the incredibly large populated group of humanity, every man, woman, and child that's ever lived, and as he sees this mass of humanity fallen, he says, "There are none that are righteous, not even one." And so here we see again how the only way righteousness, like peace, is obtained is by something outside of us coming into us. It's why Martin Luther, when he talked about the work of Jesus Christ, his perfect life, his sacrificial death, his triumphant rising from the dead, he talked about how all of this is given to us as a gift. It's imputed to us. It's alien righteousness. That's the word he used. It comes from the outside and gets inside so that we are actually regarded as righteous in God's sight. All of the perfection and holiness of Jesus Christ is credited to us. The peace of God is just like that. It comes to us from an external source. It is the peace of God. And then when it takes hold of us, when it enters our lives, it changes hearts. hearts that are full of fear and anxiety. This peace of God does battle with all of our worst fears, all of our deepest anxieties. And so this peace of God that comes from the outside in is the source of our ultimate hope. It's not based on some future possibility. It's based on a historical fact, the person and work of Jesus Christ. So here's the important point. In order for us to experience the peace of God, we first must experience peace with God. And that is the peace that comes to us as a gift in the work of Jesus Christ. As an old hymn puts it, my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. The historical reality of our Lord's life, death, and resurrection, not a future possibility. I have a secret that I want to share with you. It's not one that I'm necessarily embarrassed about. Well, maybe I am just a little bit. But for many years now, I've listened to a radio program called Coast to Coast AM. It airs on all kinds of radio stations around North America. It's broadcast late at night. I'm fascinated by it. I love the way the host interviews guests and takes calls from people all over the world. They delve into deep mysteries, the paranormal, conspiracy theories of one kind or another. I was listening to it just the other night, and they had an expert on aliens on. He was talking about alien life forms, and his theory on this was that aliens are not so much creatures from another world, some distant planet. They're actually human beings, just like us, who've come to us from the future. It's an interesting theory. And as I thought about that, I thought, well, imagine if that's true. That's great. Because all we have to do is find one of these aliens, and he'll know all about the struggles of our lives, including this COVID-19 pandemic that we're all dealing with right now. They know how to deal with this. It's all in their history books. They've studied about this in school. We need to find one of them, and he'll explain it all to us. Of course, with my luck, the alien I find is some 300-year-old nobody who dropped out of school, still living with his alien parents, never did anything with his life, maybe some alien junkie who's burned out on some narcotic that we won't discover for another 100 years. He's going to be of absolutely no help to us. Look, here's the point. Jesus of Nazareth, Christ the Lord, was a real person, not only the eternal Son of God, but a human being, just like you and me, with all of our fears and anxieties and struggles. He knew them. He experienced them. Think about the Garden of Gethsemane, how troubled he was, anguished. Think about self-isolation in the most profound example, when he was on his cross, isolated not only from his friends, but from his Father. When he cried out in anguish, "Why have you forsaken me?" He did this for us. And because he did, we have peace with God and the peace of God. So what is outside comes in and impacts our hearts. It does battle with our worst fears. The natural result of that is the second stage, where something that is inside of us, this peace of God that inhabits us, gets outside of us again, so that the environments that we live in are profoundly impacted by the power of God. This is something that I've seen on many occasions throughout the course of my ministry, as I visited with people in hospitals and nursing homes, people whose life is falling apart for whatever reason. They have all kinds of trouble, and yet they feel this incredible peace. They speak about it. It doesn't make sense. Their world is full of pain, and yet they are at peace. It confirms exactly what Paul says about this peace, that it transcends understanding. That means we can't figure it out. It doesn't make sense to us. We certainly can't produce it. It's a gift. And as a gift of God, it radically changes the environments that we inhabit. And so the point here is that we are protected. We are shielded. That's why I love that verb that Paul uses about the peace of God, guarding our hearts. It's a strong military word. He was chained to a Roman officer as he wrote these words. He was in a tough spot. He was in prison. And yet that connection that he had to that Roman officer perhaps gave him an opportunity to reflect on how we are also connected to the peace of God, how it watches over us. We're never alone. That's why I love these words too, for the way they talk not only about the peace of God as if that's just one single attribute of God, one gift that he gives to us. Paul also goes on to talk about not just the peace of God, but the God of peace. The God of peace will be with you. Not just one particular gift of God, but God himself. When we have that peace and that presence of God within us, when it comes from the outside to the inside, it changes us so much so that it gets outside of us again, so that we can be the kind of people who impact the world around us. There's an illustration that many preachers have used over the years that I find helpful. It talks about the difference between a thermometer and a thermostat. If you go to that unit that's in your kitchen or dining room, you'll see the thermometer and the thermostat there. There's the two components. The thermometer measures the temperature of the room, and the thermostat is set to a certain temperature so that when it gets to that point, either the air conditioning or the furnace will kick on. So it controls the environment. It doesn't just measure it, it controls it. The point here is that we should live our lives with not a thermometer as our guiding tool, but the thermostat. Thermometers just record the environment. And if that's our ruling guide, we're just going to be constantly reacting to the situations we find ourselves in, probably panicking a lot because of them. But the thermostat controls the environment. And that's exactly how the peace of God operates here. The thermometer is what records the environment. The thermostat controls the environment. And so this is what enables us to know that because of the peace of God, we are intricately connected to one who is with us and who controls the situations that we find ourselves in. That doesn't mean all of the struggles and problems will immediately disappear. It just means that we face them with courage, with the peace of God, with the presence of God who is always with us. It's something that we especially experience in relationships with others, which is why self-isolation and social distancing is so difficult right now. When we are with other people who have that peace and who have that peace impact the worlds that we inhabit with them, we are blessed. It makes me think of a song that I love. I've used this as an illustration before. It's a country song by the Dixie Chicks. It's called Easy Silence. It describes all of the pain and the noise and the brokenness of a world that's gone wrong. And yet, as the singer offers this song to a loved one who is with her in all of that, her shelter in the storm, she speaks of how that person is a refuge. I come to find a refuge in the easy silence that you make for me. It's okay when there's nothing more to say to me, and the peaceful quiet that you create for me, and the way you keep the world at bay for me. What a gift it is to be with people like that, who are that kind of a refuge, a sanctuary. Our prayers are with people who are alone now, who don't have that gift of that special person that they would want to be with, whose presence is so pacifying, so life-giving. But know that even if that is the case, you have the presence of the most powerful and loving person in the universe with you. Not just the peace of God, but the God of peace. Because of him, we can face whatever difficulty we are in with courage, trusting in the perfect work of Jesus Christ, God with us in every situation. We can share that peace so that we are not only people who react to the situations we find ourselves in, but we are change agents who help control it for others. I hope this message has enabled you to understand the peace of God a little more clearly, not only to understand it, but to experience it. And so I want to just conclude by saying, my prayer for you is that you will know this peace, that the God of peace will be with you. Go in peace, be well, and God bless you.